All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. Exciting day, fascinating day. Nancy Pelosi is back in charge for better and for worse. And we're gonna talk about that in a little bit. Donald Trump has obviously lost his mind, but we knew that a while back, but he proved it again yesterday, I should say. And we're gonna have some of the fallout from that, including his comments about Jim Mattis. And that's a little bit later in the program. And Anna, I said it yesterday on air, but let me say in person, congrats on winning the host challenge and winning it convincingly with. You
had a big, you closed a big lead though, right? Remember when you closed a big lead?
And look at her rubbing it in. Look at her rubbing it in.
Okay, I've been trying.
Act like you've been there before.
So I've been meaning to say thank you to everyone. Today's been a crazy day. It's been nonstop. The news cycle's out of control and super intense. But seriously, I just want to thank everyone who signed up for membership, period. Even if you didn't do it under my name, you're helping the company out tremendously. But for those of you who did sign up under my name, I love you.
Okay, all right. So the other guys, I like you. The ones.
No, I love all of you. It's just, for those who helped me win, you gave me the opportunity to do what I'm doing right now, which is make Cenk a little miserable.
All right, I hear you. Anyway, we're all united again. tyt.com/join to become a member. We have fascinating developments throughout today, and including probably some live developments during the show. And then Rebel headquarters, of course, and then the post game. And the post game, that's just for members. I want to talk about the New York Times article against Bernie Sanders. Again, so that was the one that came out yesterday, not the New York Times hit piece on him from a couple of days ago. So we'll discuss that and break it down. This one is not as much of a hit piece. It's very negative, but it's more of a mixed bag on how true it is. But I want to talk about the framing too. So tyt.com/join and become a member. We're almost at 43,000. It'd be great to get there today. But let's get started with the news.
All right. The 116th Congress was sworn in today, meaning that Democrats control the House of Representatives, and starting on day one, they have begun their investigations. At least they have begun by outlining exactly what they plan on investigating. Now, Representative Nancy Pelosi, who has just been confirmed as the new Speaker of the House, says that Trump will be investigated on a number of fronts. In fact, she was quoted as saying that he was used to serving with a Republican Congress, House, and Senate that was a rubber stamp to him. That won't be the case. Oversight of government by the Congress is our responsibility. That's the role we play. So among what they plan on investigating, they want to look into Trump's immigration policies, specifically the number of children who have died in Border Patrol custody. They also want to look into the zero tolerance policy, and they want to get a specific status report on all the children who were separated from their families. They also want to look into Donald Trump's conflicts of interest, so his business ties and how they play a role in the decisions that he makes, and also some of his decisions to hold meetings in his properties, which means that money is being funneled to him through these meetings. Also, they want to look into his tax returns. So Trump has refused to release his tax returns. Democrats in the House say that they're going to push for him to release his tax returns, and also security clearances for people like Flynn and Jared Kushner. So that's just a quick outline, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. So Representative Nadler, Jerry Nadler, was on CBS's This Morning, and he spoke about what he plans on doing. Let's take a look.
For the last 2 years, the president has had no oversight and no accountability from Congress. The Republican Congress was completely derelict in its responsibility to provide oversight. We are going to provide that oversight. We're going to use the subpoena power if we have to. We will call in Mr. Whitaker, for instance. We'll have to protect the Mueller investigation and pass that legislation. We'll call in Mr. Whitaker, who's agreed to come in, although he can't seem to find a date. And we'll subpoena him if necessary, and we'll ask questions about.
Is that job one for you when you take over the committee?
Well, it's one of two jobs. First job is to pass H.R. 1, which is the democratization bill to guarantee free elections, deal with gerrymandering, deal with campaign finance, so people can't buy elections, so people feel that the elections are proper,
Right.
and that they control them, not plutocrats.
We got to go, Congressman. But thank you, Jerry Nadler. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
All right, you're talking about money in politics. We gotta go. I mean, they might have run out of time, to be fair to them, but that was such an abrupt ending. So I like the fact that Representative Nadler also mentioned that they want to get money out of politics. That is an important order of business, and it seems like he is focused on that. But they're also planning on focusing on Trump and some of his actions in his first 2 years as president.
Yeah. So I believe that they actually ran out of time, but it was a funny moment where they're like, somebody mentioned money in politics, red alert, get off the air immediately. Okay, you guys might want to look into that in the mainstream media. It turns out it might be a little bit influential. So I like that HR1 is their top priority because it's to clean up elections, and that's wonderful. That's our top issue because it's the issue that affects all others. Am I satisfied that HR1 is good enough? Not remotely. But that's standard Democratic Party leadership stuff. They actually, I think the right answer, of course, is an amendment. This is dinking and dunking. I'll take it. I'm not opposed to small progress. I would just like big progress as well, and I'd like to fight for that. And of course, they're not going to do that. And in fact, the Democratic leadership, including Nancy Pelosi, are the ones who fight against an amendment the hardest. I know that because I founded Wolfpack, and Wolfpack fights to get an amendment and goes state by state to do it. And Democratic leadership often calls in at the state level and says, do not let them do a resolution for a convention that would propose an amendment. So it's not just that they're for a little change. They are actually, as they are in the PAYGO situation, they are actively opposed to big change that progressives are in favor of.
So the two main things that House Democrats want to accomplish shows you just how much of a mixed bag establishment Democrats are. Because on one hand, while they wouldn't support a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics, it is important to elect them over Republicans because these investigations are important. I would want the same investigations if it were, let's say, Barack Obama, who was riddled with conflicts of interest, who was using the office or his position of power to enrich himself financially, right? And so I'm glad that Democrats are looking at that, but at the same time, of course, they have some significant flaws as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we walked the walk 1,000 different times, and if you watch the show regularly, you know that. And we thought the Clinton Foundation had significant issues. It was the Saudis were not donating to the Clinton Foundation because they were in a charitable mood. Now they, unlike the Trump Foundation, actually did use it for charity. So it was infinitely better than Trump as usual, but that's a very low bar. And so, in this case, I like HR1, and I like it infinitely better than what the Republicans have done, which is steep themselves knee deep, neck deep in corruption. But I can't stand that the Democratic Party is fighting against an amendment overall. And so that's just the reality of it. Now in terms of the conflicts of interest, there's so many that it even overwhelmed me. I had missed this one until today, so sorry about that. It turns out that the Trump might have ordered the FBI not to relocate as it was planning to do. Why? Because it turns out the FBI headquarters is across the street from his hotel. It's a nice tourist draw. Jesus Christ, should you investigate that? Of course you should investigate that. Jared Kushner has a ton of business interests that he is still actively involved in that is tied to foreign interests.
Yes.
That way other countries can funnel money to a person who was handling senior policy at the White House. How did he get security clearance? Should he have gotten security clearance? Obviously, Michael Flynn should not have gotten security clearance, and he was a national security advisor. And he has now pled guilty to the things that caused them to have issues in the first place, why he shouldn't have gotten clearance. And so these are very legitimate investigations. And as usual with the Democrats, they're partly saying we're gonna go right now, and partly saying, whoa, I mean, look, let's take it easy on the tax returns. We're gonna take our time because we wanna establish a potential relationship with Trump on things like the infrastructure bill, et cetera. I would love for them to pass a real infrastructure bill, not one that just enriches Trump's friends and donors. But that doesn't mean that you have to slow down on asking for tax returns. Being nice to Trump is not necessarily a winning strategy.
No, definitely not. In fact, it would be stupid for them to go out of their way to be nice with Trump, to try to negotiate with Trump. I think maybe in some cases negotiating could make sense, but he's not willing to move an inch for you, even if it's to the benefit of countless Americans. So why would you go out of your way to be nice to him? Now, Representative Elijah Cummings is not interested in being nice to Trump. In fact, he is the new chairman for the House Oversight and Reform Committee, and he's planning to immediately send out document requests and subpoenas to get to the bottom of the family separation policy, including documentation on every child who was separated from their parents at the border and where they are now. Some of those kids still haven't been reunited with their parents because their parents were deported after the children were taken away from them. So they're still in US custody. The United States did not keep track of where the parents went. And so it's a complete and utter disaster. And luckily we have some lawmakers who want to get to the bottom of it. They haven't let go of that story. They want to figure out what's going on. Elijah Cummings also says, I want to probe senior administration officials across the government who have abused their positions of power and wasted taxpayer money, as well as President Trump's decisions to act in his own financial self-interest rather than the best interests of the American people.
I agree with his priorities, and I like that he's focusing on the kids first because that actually has time urgency. They are separated from their parents. We don't know where their parents are. We got to fix that right now, right now. So they're going to wait on some things. I like that they're not waiting on that. So overall, is it a good thing that the Democrats took over the House and we're going to have some real oversight now? Absolutely, it's wonderful, okay? As usual, do we want them to go a little farther? Yes, right? But as far as this is concerned, take your victories. It's a good victory. It's a solid beginning. And so I'm very happy with it. And I'll give you a little bit more context too. So how did the Republicans react when they had oversight power over Democratic presidents? Well, Representative Dan Burton from Indiana was in charge of oversight during the Clinton years. And he did things like investigate whether the Clintons murdered Vince Foster. So that's an insane conspiracy theory, and they spent taxpayer money chasing that. So Republicans, if you're saying, oh my God, you're gonna do too much oversight and it's political, spare me your crocodile tears.
Right.
That was Dan Burton. Kevin McCarthy was not as crazy. He was, though, more accidentally honest. So I'm gonna give you his quote. This is when they were doing investigations on Benghazi. So they always say, oh, no, it's not political. We care a lot about what happened in Benghazi. That's why we were doing these select committees. Except that Kevin McCarthy accidentally admitted in 2015, quote, everybody thought Hillary Clinton was unbeatable, right? But we put together a Benghazi special committee, a select committee. What are her numbers today?
Yeah.
So that is a direct admission that they did investigation of the Obama administration to try to do political damage on Hillary Clinton's candidacy, and then they brag later about bringing her poll numbers down.
Right, exactly. So it was political, and if they had done the investigation once, then it's understandable, right? Because it should be investigated. There's nothing wrong with doing it once, but it became political when it became a nonstop, repetitive talking point, both on Fox News and among Republican lawmakers. It became political when they insisted on doing the same investigation over and over again, which had cleared Hillary Clinton previously. I mean, they did it for political reasons. It's abundantly clear. And so when it comes to Trump, I don't want it to be political. I think that these investigations make sense. And of course, Republicans are gonna use that it's political talking point to try to make it seem like this is nothing more than a witch hunt.
Yeah, I give you that context, and the final piece of that context is, by the way, they investigated 9 different times. Every time they cleared the Obama administration, including Hillary Clinton, of any wrongdoing, any crimes, nothing. And that was the Republicans, because it just wasn't true. But they kept going at it again and again until Hillary Clinton lost the election. 1 month later, they disbanded the select committee. They were still in charge, but they're like, oh, we don't need that anymore. That was obviously political. They are absolutely brazen about it. So we give you the context so that when the mainstream media calls it even and says, well, I don't know. No, we do know. The Republicans brag about how they make oversight political, and they try to do damage to the other party. So Democrats, we don't want you to do likewise. We just want you to be appropriately aggressive and not worry about what the Republicans say, not worry about what Donald Trump says, and not worry about what the mainstream media says. So go forward. For the moment being, it looks like they are, so that's good news.
Yes. Moving on to some other news. Nancy Pelosi is disputing a talking point that we've been hearing in the mainstream media quite a bit lately, that a sitting president cannot be indicted. Well, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that a sitting president cannot be indicted. And this talking point is perpetuated by a Department of Justice guideline from back in the day. So Nancy Pelosi addresses this during a recent interview with the Today Show, and here's her take on it.
Do you believe the special counsel should honor and observe the Department of Justice guidance that states a sitting president cannot be indicted?
I do not think that that is conclusive. No, I do not.
So you think it's possible that special counsel Mueller could legally indict a sitting president?
Let's just see what Mueller does. Let's spend our time on getting results for the American people.
As you well know, there is longstanding Department of Justice guidance that states a sitting president should not be indicted. But it is not the law.
No, it is not the law. Everything indicates that a president can be indicted after he is no longer president of the United States.
What about a sitting president?
Well, the sitting president when he's no longer president of the United States.
A president who is in office. Okay. Could Robert Mueller come back and say, I am seeking an indictment?
I think that that is an open discussion. I think that is an open discussion in terms of the law.
So I agree with her on that. Yes, there is Justice Department guidance on this, but it is not a law. It's not written in our Constitution. There's no indication that it would be impossible for a sitting president to be indicted. I mean, first of all, I think it really depends on the crime, right? The alleged crime. So if a sitting president has been charged with something super serious, like let's say murder, right? What, that person can't be indicted until they're no longer president?
Yeah, so overall, I agree with her tenor. There's an important point I'm going to disagree with in a little bit, but in terms of the indictment, the Justice Department guidance was from 1973. That doesn't mean it's wrong, and it is their guidance, and I think it has some weight. The Supreme Court has never weighed in on it. Now, theoretically, I was going to say if the president shot someone, we would,
impeach him? I don't know with Republicans.
But with the Republicans, I don't know. I don't know if that theory holds.
Yeah.
So if they, and it's not going to be murder, okay? But then you get into how serious is the crime, and will the Republicans impeach or not impeach? But a crime is a crime, so. And I don't mean jaywalking, I mean serious enough, like a felony, for example, the campaign finance violation. So what if the Republicans say, no, we're not going to impeach, I don't care. But it is a clear felony, and I mean, any other person but the president would be charged. That's very problematic for our democracy to say that we will not indict a sitting president under any circumstance. And 2 years from now, the statute of limitations might have run, and witnesses will forget and have faulty memory. Prosecutors will have a harder time trying it. And you know how Democrats are; they'll say we don't look backward, we look forward. So there are signs for concern about the Democrats' zeal in pursuing this. We don't want it to be political either, but we also don't want to let him get away with it if he actually committed a crime.
Don't you feel like what's happening right now is not only testing our system of government, but also showing that it has glaring flaws, right? Because the whole point of 3 branches of government is checks and balances. And right now, especially over the last 2 years, we've had a Republican-controlled Congress that had no interest in serving as a check on the executive branch's power. And so when you have that failure in our political system, and then you add on this guidance by the Justice Department, then that means that there could be no justice for the American people if the president is found guilty of committing a serious crime.
Yeah, and so it's a balancing act. So you don't want the opposing party to try to arrest the president willy-nilly. Trust me that the Republicans would immediately begin to abuse that. On the other hand, you can't let the president be above the rule of law. So that's why it's a balancing act. That's why it's not an easy answer for the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi, so let's be fair about that. And Mueller has not come forward yet, so we don't know, other than the campaign finance violations, how serious it is. Although I can guarantee you the Republicans would not have paused for 1 second if Obama had clearly committed a felony, as Trump has. So let's just be clear about that. But I would not want the Democrats pursuing a non-serious crime, to be honest with you. I didn't like it when the Republicans did it to Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
And you can disagree with me that whether that was a serious or non-serious crime, but I don't think that it was worthy of impeachment or indictment. And if it was along those lines and I thought the Democrats were doing it for political reasons, I would not agree. In this case, we already have one serious crime on the board and likely far more coming up, which then leads us to the impeachment discussion.
Right, so now that we know what Nancy Pelosi believes in regard to a sitting president possibly getting indicted, what does she think about Trump getting impeached? And this is a nuanced answer. I'll give you some more details after you watch the clip.
Many Democrats are talking about impeachment. You've said it would be sad and divisive for the country to pursue impeachment. Are you willing to rule it out?
Well, we have to wait and see what happens with the Mueller report. We shouldn't be impeaching for a political reason, and we shouldn't avoid impeachment for a political reason. So we just have to see how it comes.
Yeah, I actually think that's a nearly perfect answer.
Yeah,
she's gonna muck it up a little bit here in one other thing that she said, but first I want to give her credit. I think that's exactly right. Do not impeach for a political reason, but do not stop impeachment for a political reason either. And before the elections, Democrats for political reasons were very worried about bringing up impeachment because they thought that might hurt their chances in the election. Now, the Mueller report hadn't come out yet, so it's okay, as they got lucky in that sense. But if it had come out and it was damning and they refused to talk about it because of their ideology that, hey, all politics is the same as it was in the 1990s, which is preposterously wrong, then it would have been infuriating. But for now, I think that's the exact right balance.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, if the Mueller report had come out and it was damning and it had proven that Trump was guilty of all the things that we suspect him of being guilty of, and she said, no impeachment, it's gonna look political, then it would be ridiculous. But in this case, the Mueller report hasn't come out and she's doing the right thing here. I think that it would look really, really bad for congressional Democrats to go forward with any type of attempt to impeach him right now.
So for example, no, look, and that also depends too, of course. If Mueller report were to, for example, never come out, then I would say, yeah, I think you should probably go forward on the felony violation of the hush money that was clearly a crime that Michael Cohen is going to prison for 3 years. Why is one guy going to prison for 3 years and the other guy you can't touch? But it doesn't matter because Mueller report is going to come out, and I think it is correct to wait for it so you have all the information before you make decisions, so it doesn't seem preemptive. It seems justified if that's the direction they're going to go.
Right, but so look, for Democrats, remember, we're thinking about this from a justice standpoint. Politicians are not going to think about it from a justice standpoint. I'm sure that that's a factor that they consider, but what they consider more than anything is how is this going to look? And for most Americans, unfortunately, they don't care about those campaign contributions. Even some Democrats that write into the show think, well, is there really any proof that this was a campaign finance violation? They just, even if they're wrong, they don't buy into it. So it would look political if Democrats went after Trump over that and that only.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that, but that's okay. It's a fair disagreement to have, and the Mueller report's gonna come out. So last thing on Pelosi, she told USA Today that she does not intend to seek grounds for impeachment unless it's, quote, clearly bipartisan. No, that I don't agree with at all. If the Mueller report comes out and there's really serious crimes in there, but the Republicans go, yeah, whatever, but Trump will have mean tweets about me and I'll get primaried, so I don't care. That is an incredibly high likelihood. It could be so devastating that the Republicans go, oh, okay, you guys are right, okay, but that's less likely. And so if we're gonna need Republican permission to pursue impeachment, if it is warranted, why did we put the Democrats in charge?
I know, it just further proves that Democrats can be very weak, and it's sad.
Yeah, she almost had it and we would have been happy to give her credit today, and on a historic day where she's now Speaker of the House again. Only two other people have been non-consecutive Speaker of the House twice, including Congressman Rayburn and Henry Clay. She's the first female Speaker of the House. She was back in 2007. Here she is again. And I think that her comments on impeachment were just right until she had to say, well, I'm gonna Wait till it's clearly bipartisan. And unfortunately, that gets to our frustrations with Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic leadership. Same thing on PAYGO. They want permission from Republicans. We didn't elect Republicans. It was a tidal wave. 40 to 41 seats they picked up. That is one of the largest pickups in United States history. So when you have a wave like that, you're not supposed to go ask the other party for permission.
Right. We got to take a break. When we come back, we are going to give you an update on the government shutdown. And I'm starting to think Lindsey Graham is actually trying to sabotage Trump.
Yeah, I don't think so. Okay, but it's an interesting conversation. Yeah. Come right back for it. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Jet53 from the member section says, Anna, you can brag that you won the host competition, but just don't turn into Trump. Don't start saying that you had a tremendous win, a bigly win, a strong win.
No, we're done with the competition thing. I'm actually starting to feel a little bad. Like, no, I'm being serious though. Like, because I don't want people to think that we're actually like hating on each other. Like we have a good relationship. Like I'm not really trying to make Cenk feel miserable. Like let's keep it real. So
I'm greatly amused by that. I think I'm gonna be okay. All right, by the way, we're only 4 people away from 43,000 members. So tyt.com/join. But again, free trial continues. So tyt.com/holiday if you want to try it out for a week. Okay, so it's a great time to do it. Progressive Todd writes in from the member section, if a sitting president can't be indicted, then there should be legislation or an amendment to fix that. No one should be above the law. Hear, hear, brother. Sudden Eternity on Twitter says, so Dems' first moves in control of the House make progressive change impossible, check. Start a bunch of useless investigations of Trump to distract from their betrayal of their base, check. Go Justice Dems. First of all, hold for the vote and let's see how people vote, okay, on PAYGO. And second of all, we can do both. I don't think that it's like, hey, you're doing Trump investigations, that's it, you can't do any policy. Now, they don't want to do the policy, that's what we're gonna hold them to account for. And so, on the other hand, if you said to me, hey, you can do Medicare for all, but in return you have to let Donald Trump get away with crimes, I would say, why? Why do I have to let him get away with crimes? I can do both. Okay, politicians barely work. Trust me that they have plenty of time to do both. Okay, Mathemagician Me says, welcome to today's S Show, a new era where Democrats will produce for the donors by screwing little people instead of Republicans. At least we have Cenk and Anna to cover it. Well, thank you, we appreciate that. And the last one is from YouTube Super Chat. Mishmonster says, today I was listening to NPR. They claimed Bernie Sanders was too far left to win Midwest voters. Infuriating. Also, by the way, let me just pause to say, non-factual. He did great in the Midwest in the primaries. So just not remotely true. Again, NPR bias against Bernie Sanders for the billionth time in a row. We will talk about New York Times bias in the post game for the members, tyt.com/join.
I would love to listen to that. So if you can tweet us again and tell me which show on NPR, just for my own information.
Sure. Anna has a pro NPR bias.
Okay, no, but I want to know. I want to know because I could be wrong. So please send that to us.
And then Mishmonster says one last thing. Also, longtime fans, shout out to you being solid trans supporters. I'm a trans woman in Florida. Thank you, we appreciate that. Much love to you. And we're here to protect everybody to the best of our abilities, okay? We fight for you guys. So, all right, let's go on to the next story.
Okay. We are on the 13th day of a partial government shutdown. Of course, this is all over funding for the border wall, $5 billion that Trump is demanding. And Democrats so far have refused to give him that funding. Now, Democrats have proposed other measures, and it appears that Trump is unlikely to sign them, but right now Democrats plan to vote through spending measures that would fund agencies like the Interior Department through at least the end of September. The package of bills allots $1.3 billion for border fencing, but nothing for Trump's supposed wall, right?
I have a surprising prediction on this in a minute.
Okay, so before we get to Cenk's prediction, Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, wants Trump to continue doing what he's doing, even though there have already been some pretty severe ramifications in regard to this government shutdown. So here he is on Sean Hannity's show, urging Trump to keep doing what he's doing.
If he gives in now, that's the end of 2019 in terms of him being an effective president. That's probably the end of his presidency. Donald Trump has made a promise to the American people. He's going to secure our border. Every Democrat in the past has voted for border funding. Now they're changing their mind.
So he apparently thinks it's a good idea. He thinks this is good advice for Trump to continue this government shutdown until Democrats finally concede and give him the $5 billion he's demanding for the border wall. And Lindsey Graham also says, hey, we have a really good deal for Democrats. We can offer workers' visas for DACA recipients, and they don't have to worry about getting deported for 3 years. What's so bad about that? No, but Democrats have not bought into that, and I'm glad that they haven't. But Cenk, you have a prediction on this.
Yeah, first, real quick on Graham. Why is he doing this? He doesn't care that much about immigration. That's not his main issue. His main issue is starting wars or maintaining wars. And so they're all like NASCAR drivers, and his biggest sponsor is the defense contractor. So the reason he's doing this is to earn credit with Donald Trump. Oh, Mr. President, you were so right about that. Well, you need to stick strong, and we're all behind you. And he talked against Mitt Romney. He said, oh, people like Mitt Romney should understand that they need to fund the border wall, and Mr. Trump is so right on that. And then he turns around in a meeting that he had a couple of days ago and says to Trump, now remember, you should stay in Syria and Afghanistan, right?
Right.
So there's a quid pro quo going on here. I'll back you on the wall, and you back me on further wars.
So that's a possibility, and probably the likely possibility. The other possibility, though, is that he wants Trump out. And right now, the majority of Americans are blaming Trump for this government shutdown, and they're angry about it. And so I would argue that there's a possibility, even though it's a small one, that Trump is being sabotaged by Senator Graham.
No,
he's purposely giving him bad advice.
That would require politicians to be savvy and smart and strategic. And I've yet to see one playing chess, let alone three-dimensional chess, as they claim in Washington. No, they're generally simpletons, as I think Lindsey Graham is here. I think the quid pro quo is much simpler. And by the way, Mitt Romney, for all of his tough talk from yesterday, says, oh, no, I'm for funding the border wall. Yeah, that's what we thought, okay? Anyways, now the surprising prediction. Now, the Democrats have Donald Trump exactly where they want him. He's reeling. The shutdowns lasted for a long time here. The Democrats have the House. They get to pass a bill to reopen the government in a way that is popular with the American people. There is no reason at all why they should give an inch to Donald Trump. I believe that they will soon give a surprising concession to Donald Trump that allows him to save face so that they could reopen the government. Why? Because their donors are going to start panicking about the markets. The markets are going down, and the Democrats work for their donors. They will soon be getting calls saying, enough, the market's gone down too much. You gotta go make a deal, go in there. Who cares, 2.5 million, 1.3 billion for the wall, make some sort of compromise and let's be done with this. Now, we're gonna get to find out if I'm right, because I tell you ahead of time.
That's an interesting prediction, and you could be right. But one of the reasons why, let's say the stock market just experienced another dip is because of the trade war. So these donors are blaming Trump and the trade war at this current moment. That's what they're blaming the dip in the stock markets on.
No, that's true. But at the same time, if the government were to reopen, it would at least give a temporary bump up to the markets. And at some point, people are going to get jittery. And so they're gonna call the people that they gave a lot of money to on the Democratic side and go, let's go. We gotta have this thing headed back in the right direction. They are not interested in losing money, and they are not interested in the markets crashing, even if it's Trump's fault.
I know, but when it comes to destroying the markets, Trump has a multi-pronged approach, right? This government shutdown is just one part of that approach. But I mean, Republicans are just as guilty, if not more guilty, of these giant campaign donations from corporations. And
no, they're way more guilty. But that doesn't absolve the Democrats. My point here is simply that the Democrats will give a surprising concession when they don't need to at all. And I'm telling you ahead of time why they're doing it. And they will pretend that it was, oh, well, the government workers, they've been out for so long and we feel sorry for them and they're really important and this just has gone on too long. No, I'm telling you ahead of time, it's because their donors will call them and say, wrap it up. Now, if I shouldn't be right. This is a clear win for the Democrats, and so far they're holding strong. So maybe I won't be right. Maybe it'll go another week, 2 weeks, and Trump will concede. We'll find out.
We'll find out. Well, Joe Scarborough, who's a Republican, does not want Democrats to concede. In fact, he spoke about that recently on Morning Joe. Here's what he had to say.
70% of Americans oppose his wall shutdown strategy. So when it comes to pure numbers, when it comes to pure data, the Trump shutdown is a political bust, and the Republicans know that. The Democrats have a proposal on the table that would get the government open today and get immigration judges back in their courts and get immigration services like E-Verify that ensure that there are legal people who are getting hired by businesses, would get those E-Verify services back online today and make our country safer for legal immigrants, safer for Americans. This is, again, a plan that Republicans in the Senate have supported. But you got a President, Mika, who wants his phony wall on the Mexican border so badly that he has frozen the possibility of any meaningful negotiations taking place.
No one wants it.
Yeah, while the government stays shut down.
And then he addresses Democrats specifically, and here is his plea to them.
And there is no reason, let me underline this, there is no reason Democrats should give an inch on a phony wall that is nothing more than a political punchline for this president.
Yeah. Well, I just laid out the reasons, so we'll find out if they're on the level or not. But yes, any rational discussion of the politics of the situation would tell you that the Democrats should hold steady and that the Republicans will put pressure on Donald Trump because 70% of the country is against them. That's a terrible situation to be in. And the longer this goes on, the more they'll be blamed for it. Well, let's see what happens.
I really hope they don't concede. I really want to win my bet.
Yeah.
2 for 2.
Let's see what happens.
Right. And not only that, I mean, just based on the principle of it. I mean, this is a chance for Democrats like Nancy Pelosi, for instance, to prove that they can be fighters, to prove that they can do the right thing and not concede. And if they concede just based on the desires of their donors, then, I mean, I really hope you're not right.
Yeah.
I'd like to not be disappointed as much in 2019. I know that that's asking for a lot.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, they wouldn't come in with a weird, complete capitulation. It would be too embarrassing for them. They wouldn't come in and go, okay, $5 billion for the wall, and you win, Mr. President. That would be preposterous. They will come in with a compromise concession that is a face-saving gesture to Donald Trump, which lets them off the hook. So we'll see if that happens, because there's no reason for them to budge at all. They should have Trump come to them, but my guess is that they'll rescue.
So a lot of these conversations usually have to do with the negotiating that's taking place, what lawmakers are saying, but what are the real life consequences of this partial government shutdown? We're gonna tell you that and more when we return from the break.